Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KidBadger.com, here today continuing that journey with Rifle 301 and Unknown Munitions. We left off with creating a known for Rifle 301. Jake at Unknown Munitions had loaded up a box of ammo, went out, shot it with my boys and on a couple other occasions, and collected data. So using the magneto speed, got velocities as I was shooting through 5-shot groups, and took all of that data and graphed it. Basically showed the muzzle velocity increase and then taper off. So with that ammo, basically I'd reached what I was going to reach for that gun and that barrel as far as muzzle velocities go, it being a brand new gun. So the muzzle velocity would pretty much stay there until potentially it gets shot out, in which case muzzle velocity would drop some. So creating that known with Rifle 301, it's time to move on to the next step. Next step was a ladder test. So I got from Unknown Munitions a series of rounds to go shoot through and collect data on. So the way this works is you're taking your brass that you're going to use, in my case, that Lapua brass, and the actual projectile. So again, this is gonna be for my son hunting. So using a 108 grain Berger Elite Hunter, and as far as the projectile goes. And then he actually loaded up 2 different powders. So I had 3 rounds with this much powder, and then incremental increase, another 3 rounds, another incremental increase, another 3 rounds, so on and so forth for the first set of powder. And then with the second set of powder, same thing. So sets of 3 rounds going through incremental increases, which is the ladder test. I ended up taking those rounds out, took them to the range and shot a number of 3-shot groups at 100 yards, again collecting all my data with my magneto speed and recording everything. And here's what I ended up getting. Right here is my first group using 41.8 grains of H4350 powder with the average velocity coming in at 2,823 feet per second. This is my second group using 42.1 grains of H4350 powder. Average velocity coming in at 2,856 feet per second. Third group using 42.4 grains of H4350 powder. Average velocity coming in at 2,878. Fourth group of 42.7 grains of H4350 powder coming in at average speed of 2,904 feet per second. My fifth and final group with the H4350 using 43.0 grains, average speed coming in at 2,922 feet per second. After that, I switched over to a number of rounds loaded with N555 powder. First group using 41.5 grains came in with an average velocity of 2,697 feet per second. My second group using 42.0 grains of N555 came in with an average velocity of 2,711 feet per second. Increasing to 42.5 grains. Average velocity came in at 2,750 feet per second. Next group with 43.0 grains of N555 came in at 2,805 feet per second. And final group with the N555 at 43.5 grains came in average speed of 2,834 feet per second. What does all that stuff tell us? Well, it tells us basically the muzzle velocities and standard deviation as well, looking across all those numbers. So a lot of you guys are like, those are terrible groups, I can shoot better than that. You probably can. Like, this is me out there, not cherry picking, did the best I could that day. And what we're actually looking at though is some really good stuff, because left to right, that's me, I'll own it all day long. Whatever, it is what it is. But this distance here like, aside from that one, this is really small, like really small. And that elevation, usually more than the shooter, oftentimes is indicative of the actual load. So with those, we're actually getting really small standard deviations with those loads. So really consistent. So looking across all these groups, trying to figure out which one would be best for this loading. If you go over to Unknown Munitions website, they have a pretty awesome setup on their webpage where you can input a bunch of data and it will spit it back out in something relatively easily consumable. So I was able to put all the information in here and it gave me all the data back out. There was one outlier here as far as the rest of this. It was basically 2868, 2861, and then one was like 2905 for whatever reason. So aside from that outlier though, if we go across right here, standard deviation, we're looking at anywhere from, looks like 4 to about 11.4, which is pretty awesome. And then extreme spread, again, gives you that in there as well. And basically all the information, all those metrics that we pulled from that data. So what are we looking for? We're looking for, with respect to me, and the end state of hunting with this gun and creating ammo, or my son hunting with it and creating the ammo to that end. Going to be using those 108 grain Burger Elite Hunters, so velocity. So what we ended up landing on was actually this fourth load with 42.7 grains. And of that first powder, H4350, I believe it was, and came down to standard deviation of 7.8. Extreme spread of 14 across those 3 rounds. But that was giving us a average speed of, median speed rather, of 2,904 feet per second out of that 17-inch barrel, which is pretty good. Next, after landing on what was going to be the best with respect to powder, how much powder, what was going to give us the best velocity with respect to actual application, in this case hunting, it was time to load up the next test, which was going to be a jump test. So earlier we had taken measurements with respect to how big the chamber was, everything along those lines, to include magazine capacity, like how far you could push the projectile out until it actually made contact with the lands and grooves. So he ended up using that powder load with that bullet and that brass and basically set a number of 3 different rounds at different depths. So one touching the lands and grooves and incrementally just barely moving off of it, slowly working our way back, like basically moving that bullet back into the case and creating a larger space between where the bullet started and those lands and grooves. The further it would have to jump to reach them, hence the jump test. So I took that ammo back out to the range and shot groups. This time, not so much worried about velocities so much because we had already landed on what kind of powder and how much powder for this round. Actually, this time, trying to go for accuracy. I will say it was just over 20 degrees out that morning, and I probably didn't do my best shooting, but here's what I got. Right here is my first group with the rounds loaded to a depth of 2.200. This is my second group loaded to a depth of 2.195. My third group loaded to a depth of 2.190. My fourth group with a flyer loaded to a depth of 2.180. And my fifth group opening up quite a bit, loaded to a depth of 2.150. And my last group loaded to a depth of 2.100. So what does that tell us? Ivan, you're a terrible shot. All right, aside from that, again, not my best work. I'm sure some of you guys could shoot way better with that gun and that ammo on that day. That's what I got. Keep in mind, I'm the variable, but I was still able to get data from that. What did that show me? Showed that that first group with those rounds loaded so the projectile was touching the lands and grooves, did not jump. That was the group I got. And progressively, as I started to move back, so it was jumping a little bit further, before it actually made contact with those lands and grooves, it started to actually tighten up some. My best group was probably number 4, even though I had that flyer off to the left. Those other 2 rounds were probably the closest of any of those rounds I shot. And then after that, again, moving back, taking some even bigger steps, when that jump started to get really big, the group started to open back up. So what did that tell us? Basically told us where kind of the sweet spot was with respect to that brass, that type of powder, that many grains of powder, that projectile, and the distance from the lands and grooves that was going to give us the best performance for that rifle, that barrel, all of those factors. At this point, having found that sweet spot, went back over to Unknown Munitions, and not only had Jake loaded up a bunch of ammunition with that perfect load for Rifle 301, but there were a few unfinished rounds that my son Jada actually got to go through the process of loading up. We were going to set those aside for actually hunting with, but we had a number of other rounds to basically go out, get his rifle zeroed, kind of trued out, and at the end of the day, get to the important part, which is competence and confidence. I took my boys out to Rock Lake Rifle Range and got Jada behind his gun, Rifle 301, so that he could get it zeroed for himself. We'd already established our velocities for that load in that rifle, right about 2,904 feet per second. So we just set to work, getting him dialed in with a good zero. After establishing that good zero, we left that 100-yard range, went over so my son could shoot out on steel. Definitely a lot of fun. Giving him, again, working on that competence as well as confidence in his gun and that ammo. And it gave me the opportunity to basically run out that data, dial for him, or have him dial rather, and get those hits on steel at distance. Really fun experience out there. Good hit, dude. Dang, dude, good shot. Nailed you were just off the left of it. Do you feel like you're dead center?
Feeling it. Last bullet.
Okay, do you think you were dead center on it?
I think I was pretty.
Okay, then maybe hold a little bit to the right of dead center, okay? Dang. Good shot, dude.
1, 2, 3.
Dang, dog. Nailed it. Good shot. Back on two. With the end state of us being able to go down and go hunting with this rifle 301 and this ammo loaded up by Unknown Munitions, I want to get my son a little bit more time behind the gun. So we ended up going out and we went out to local range and I was like, hey, here's the deal. I'm gonna set up a target out at 1, 2, 3, and 380 yards. Piece of paper with just a red dot on it, spray paint. I need you to shoot at all of those. I'm gonna give you basically whatever your dope is. You're gonna have to dial to it. I want you to shoot 1 yard at each of these yard lines. After that, we might shoot a little bit at steel. He's like, okay, let's do it. So sure enough, we went out there, said, hey, right there, 100 yards, you don't need to dial anything, go ahead, send it. Mind you, this was basically in the evening, essentially shooting light. It's starting to get dark. I think the sun had kind of just set while we were about halfway through this and had him shoot at those different yard lines, and here's what we ended up with. Here was his target at 100 yards. That target again at 200 yards. His target at 300 yards. I've got to say I was pretty impressed at this one at 400 yards, especially considering the failing light. After that, I went ahead and had him shoot a couple more rounds off of his bipod out to, I believe it was about 250 yards. And I was like, all right, have at it. So here's his first round out there onto that steel.
$5.
$5. Well, I guess I owe you $5.
And I want the animal bucks.
Double or nothing standing up.
Nope.
Next, we had a friendly wager. There was some money on the line for him to go ahead and try that same shot, but this time standing all the way up off of his bipod. Here was his first shot.
Okay.
I think that was a miss.
Want to try one more time?
Well, no, I don't owe you anything. I'm a man of my word.
No, double or nothing.
Oh. Yay.
Fine.
What?
I owe you $10.
I'll take 5 because to be fair, I did flunk that first shot and that was our deal.
It's been really cool to work through this entire process with Unknown Munitions and create a optimized load for hunting for my son's rifle. It's been really cool to see just everything that goes into it. And in addition to that, I've had a blast with my son, being able to go out, share that passion, and yeah, get him time behind his rifle with his ammo. And the other thing that is cool for me as a father about to embark on a hunting trip is to be able to see him gain confidence in his equipment and also me gain confidence. Being able to go out and have him shoot and be like, okay, cool, like dial this. And it's like, yeah, like you just hit what you were aiming at. Like, awesome, let's do this. So what's the next step? I am going to load my boys up and we're gonna head down to southern Idaho for a hunting trip. Really excited about it. Going to meet up with Joker's Wild Outdoors and gonna go down and see what we can get. They're down in Lemhi Valley, down in southern Idaho. Huge, like, I don't know, like 35,000 plus private acres or something like that. And really looking forward to sharing the experience and hopefully having my son fill some tags and bring home some meat, which will be amazing. So be sure to stay tuned as we continue that journey. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.